Hello. Welcome to the second episode of the podcast Baked in the Cake. My name is Derek Schaefer, and I'm here with my co-host, DJ Kasieha.
Hello.
And we are back better than ever after the holidays. It's been a while since our very first episode. We intended to be more on this.
It just seemed difficult to get our schedules together.
Yeah, I'm kind of debating. I'm thinking about doing a, do it online somehow. Since we don't have video right now, see if because I can always find an hour at home. But it's lots of emergency dentist appointments, and my daughter is constantly sick. It seems she's sick right now. I had to tell my wife that I'm not going to be here because she is sick.
Is it same sickness or?
I'm not sure. She woke up in the middle of the night with 102 fever, and she's screaming.
Is that your wife or?
Hazel woke up in the middle of the night with 102-degree fever, and it's really all. She's acting weird. She's lethargic and mad and fussy. But I think it's she. If you take him to the doctor, just say, "Oh, it's something viral."
Did she go to the daycare?
She did yesterday. She actually went to the doctor yesterday.
It's like continual sickness with little kids when they go to the daycare or go to school.
She had a break from daycare, and Wednesday was her first day at daycare. But Friday, we actually took her to the doctor because it was her 18-month checkup, which is technically at 19 months, but who's counting? And she was fine. She was great for it. And she got her, some vaccines and things. And so we thought maybe you can have a temperature reaction to, it can cause fever. But I called our good friend John, and he did not think that it was related to the vaccines.
Okay.
There's nothing to do. Yeah. So she got to let her be miserable. Or she's teething like crazy.
That adds to it.
I think it's a combination of her teeth. A couple molars just came through today, and fever, viral. So once we, I now have a newfound respect for the people who start a podcast with very few listeners, and they do it 3 times a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if 3 times a week would be good for us.
No, I couldn't do it. We can barely get in. It's been about a month. Yeah, it's been about a month.
Yeah.
So we're shooting for once every 2 weeks, so twice a month.
Right.
And we ended up doing once a month. But hopefully, we will start finding these to be easier to work into our schedules and do one once a week. And
I think just getting comfortable with topics and comfortable with how we envision it to be communicated. I think for me that's how do you prepare for this? I don't want to be completely unintelligent of the topic or
Yeah, we prepared for a good one for Christmas, but didn't get it. Didn't get there. We'll have to save that for next year. We'll tell you about what's baked in the cake about Christmas, because there is a lot. That would have been fun. But so how did you prepare for this one? Because I was preparing on the way, listening to Kanye West.
Well, I have actually been preparing for this one for a while.
Okay.
I think I've had a lot to sort through. Which we'll get into, but we're going to talk about Kanye West and I guess his music and his newfound faith in Christ. And I have to confess that I'm not a big fan of Kanye, but
before or after?
Oh, definitely before. I'm still up in the air after his so-called conversion.
Okay.
And I think before, I was never a fan of his. And there are some things that he did, I guess publicly, to other people that really just turned me off to him. Like, this is not somebody I'm going to have an interest in following.
After he converted?
No, before he converted.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
I think most notably in my mind was his treatment of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
in one of the award ceremonies. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, going on stage during, basically saying that there was someone better that deserved the award than her, and the amount of ego that takes to do that. I don't know. I mean, award ceremonies never seem to go the way that I guess fans would like, but I mean, come on.
And it is that is an interesting thing to do, because in the most egotistic culture you can live in, Hollywood, they spend most of the year handing out awards to each other. The awards are pretty much meaningless. They do it just to pat each other on the back. So to be the only person willing to do that is actually being the most egotistic one in the most egotistic culture that you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, out of everyone here who thinks highly of themselves, you think the most.
Yeah, I mean, what about just being like supportive of another artist? Now being
Well, I guess you could say he was supporting the other artist who
it's like, I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think musicians and famous musicians are out there trying to compete with one another. They're trying to produce good music.
Well, they do have some beef with each other because of that. Okay, I hear from my wife and the street youths, because I don't listen to this music, that Nicki Minaj and Cardi B don't really like each other because Cardi B is more successful. And Nicki Minaj has been around for much longer, and she's not near as successful.
Oh, well, I don't know anything about that.
I don't stay into that kind of stuff, but I would say for the most part, they just try to produce music.
So
that's true.
I guess my point is that I've just never been a fan of Kanye.
Yeah.
And so then hearing about his conversion to Christ, becoming a Christian, and then releasing a Christian album.
Well, maybe let's take it back a second. Did you think anything differently about him whenever he's claiming Trump? Where he's claiming he's some Trump conservative.
Well, yeah, a little bit. I mean, just the only reason why that came to my mind was because that move seemed really cultural to his crowd, or what we would say his crowd is.
Yes. It's definitely countercultural to his crowd.
And I think it kind of relates to my opinion of him now a little bit, and I think we'll maybe get into that.
He's just putting on a show.
I think that's his shtick. It's to try to make popular things that aren't popular, like Christianity. And so
it's not fashionable to be a Christian right now. That's for sure.
Well, I mean,
I think
Kanye is trying to change that.
Well, in Hollywood, I heard an interview, it might have been on a Late Show or something, about Miley Cyrus. She was doing everything as crazy as she possibly could, and then one day she realized that now she got a lot of attention for that, and now everyone else is doing everything as crazy as they could, so she calmed down a little bit, because that was actually the crazy thing to do, because it's not normal anymore. The new normal is crazy.
Justin Bieber's another one.
Well, I don't see. I this is where we get into it. I think Kanye is different than other celebrities on the issue.
Okay.
Historically, I do not really believe celebrities when they say they're saved, or have gotten saved. Now, if they were a Christian their whole life, and I mean, I certainly, and they kind of act the part, because there are Christian celebrities, but I typically, whenever they have some type of awakening, it's because they got out of rehab, and
sure,
they're a little bit vulnerable, and the reason I think it's a lot of bull is because they never stick with it. Time always tells, they never stick with it. Justin Bieber is a perfect example of that. He has he just had a new song come out that is about horrible things. I mean, terrible things, but he also claims to have like a Christian album out, and he'll go to Coachella, and then in the middle of his horrible heathen carnal music, oh, we're gonna start worshiping now.
Well,
you know,
I think maybe before we really jump into Kanye, we should talk about just the judgment of someone who claims to be a Christian. And I want to be careful because I'm not at a place to say that Kanye is not a Christian. And, I hope that doesn't come from my mouth because I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's my place to judge whether someone's a Christian or not. I guess inside me I have some thoughts,
Yeah.
But, I would never say, he's definitely not a Christian believer. And I just don't know if that's my place as a believer. And, to place that kind of judgment, I think God's going to judge us, I mean, there's some good fakers out there. I just read about a pastor, who had been raping a youth girl, and now he's just now getting convicted. I mean, so even, pastors and, that have been in church a long time claiming Christ and I think we all put on a facade. And so I don't want, just because Kanye does, bad stuff to be anything that would be like a determining factor of whether he's a Christian or not. That's not. I think we all have sinfulness, and so it's not my place to say whether he's a Christian or not. But when he came out, and this whole thing came out, I think the place I originally landed was that I'm just skeptical of everything. I've never been a bandwagon kind of guy, like everybody, says is automatically in love because Kanye is a big personality and he's claiming Christ. And, I've just never seen, even in churches, I've never been kind of like the follow along just to follow along kind of guy.
Well, there's a lot of things that happened around Kanye that make his a little bit different. Now, I still have lots of reasons to heavily criticize things he has said since then and things like that. I think we can both agree on that no new Christian needs a limelight on them.
I agree with that. Yeah.
When you see celebrities, and Shia LaBeouf is one of them. He's been back and forth on Christianity and in and out of rehab. He's been clean for a while, though. He even did a movie recently about kind of his life and why he kind of made the decisions he made. I don't know where he's at. He's actually friends with Kanye. Mm-hmm. But they go on these talk shows. They go on Ellen, and they ask them these questions like they've been a Christian their entire lives, and that they should be a pastor now. Like they should be in a place of teaching.
Right.
Which is not true. But most that's Christians shouldn't be in a place of actual teaching.
That's kind of what's going on with the people that are popular, like Kanye.
Yeah.
When he had his conversion, and I'm assuming it was probably early 2019, mid 2019 when this happened.
I think it was like last May.
Okay, I don't know the date, and that might be good to find out. But even the Apostle Paul took time off. At least that's what's alluded to when you read the book of Acts. After his conversion, it was some time before, he met the other disciples. And, I don't know who shared the gospel with Kanye or who was maybe mentoring him, but it would seem like sound advice would be, just step back a little bit and focus on learning the foundations of Christianity. But it was like almost immediately, there's an album out. And like if in our church and in any church I've ever worked with, if there's a brand new Christian, they're not going to be on stage next weekend.
Well, remember, his album is not representative of a church. It's just him. Any Christian that wants to go worship God and like one of his songs is just singing hallelujah a lot. I think that's biblical worship. I think that's great. Do it. I think it glorifies God. Do it. Now, Am I going to put him in a position to teach other worship pastors? Not at all. So there's a little bit different between congregational worship, church worship is really what we're talking about, and private worship, So I just like you wouldn't play, or well, some people do, but there are exceptions. There's a lot of Christian music that's written that's not meant for congregational worship, and most of those artists shouldn't be teaching either.
Well, I understand that, but I think one of the things that turned me off, it happened probably about 1 or 2 months ago, probably last month. I was driving down the road, turn on the Christian radio station. This wasn't K-Love. I don't know what K-Love plays. I haven't listened to him in a while. It was on XM radio, The Message, and they were playing Kanye's song, and one of Kanye's songs. And I'm like, okay, he's not a worship leader, maybe not, but they're playing his music on a worship station. It was on Selah.
Is it a worship station or is it a Christian music station?
Okay, maybe it's a Christian music station.
There is a difference in that. I don't actually listen to the radio at all. I'm extremely hipster, and if it's not an indie rock or folk band, I probably won't listen to it. But
and then in addition to that, he has these Sunday.
He calls them Sunday services.
Yeah, but I mean,
the things that make his separate is, one, it's already went longer than any of the other celebrities. Not very much endurance, but the bar's low. He has already had and showed a little bit of endurance and that he's sincere. But
or a good marketer.
Yeah, maybe. It seems sincere, but he's done a lot of the things. He just wants to. I think he's moving out of L.A. He bought a bunch of land in the middle of nowhere. He's kind of rejecting Hollywood culture in a lot of ways. But the biggest factor for me that made me think, oh, wow, this is legit, is who he was shortly. I hope he's still there. I don't know. I know the people who Kanye is surrounding himself with right now, and I don't like them. That's reason for concern.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Adam Tyson. Adam Tyson was the man that discipled Kanye. So, do you know the story at all?
No.
So, Kanye was having a personal revelation of some kind, and was seeking God. And one of his assistants, someone who works for him, essentially, he knew was a Christian and went to church, and asked him which church, and he started attending that guy's church regularly, and but never became an official member or anything of that church. So can't be held accountable to that church. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's important. He never became an official member. But Adam Tyson was the pastor at that church. And Adam Tyson made a decision to treat Kanye coming to church just like anyone else. So he says, when he gets introduced to him, he knew they were going there for a while. But
I don't know much about Adam Tyson. Is he?
He's a 5-point Calvinist.
Okay.
He has great theological degrees. He is orthodox in all his beliefs, in my opinion. He's not. He's going to be very conservative in all of his beliefs. He'll probably be complementarian. He's not gonna. He will probably have a lot of typical Christian conservative.
So you think it's someone who's legit?
Oh, I think Adam Tyson's legit. Yeah, because I listened to his sermon on Isaiah 6, which I'm very familiar with the passage, and I was like, "Wow, this is an intense sermon." And this is before I watched interviews on him about that sermon, because it was at one of Kanye's, probably his first Sunday service, and. He says when I was watching it, I was thinking, it appears that he knows that a lot of these people here are fake. I'll admit that a lot of the people who go to Kanye's Sunday services are fake. Mm. They are not real Christians. They are doing this to get close to Kanye. They're doing this,
or they're doing it because it's cool now.
Because it's cool. There's a lot of reasons, and I think a lot of them are malicious and deceitful. And he knows that. And even if they're not fake, they're only there to see Kanye. They're not there to hear Adam preach. They want to hear Kanye talk the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But Kanye has Adam Tyson come up there and preach and delivers a powerful message about what you...
So Adam preaches like in the Sunday services?
Well, he can't control Kanye. He has preached at his Sunday services. I don't think he's regular.
Because I haven't seen any recordings or anything like that.
Well, I'll send you the first one. It's a long message, so brace yourself.
Because I know that he's been at a church where Joel Osteen's preached at.
Yeah, so like Adam doesn't have control over Kanye at all.
Well, then, but how can we call him a mentor to Kanye?
Well, it's discipled.
Well,
he
it's
helped
kind of
write the album, his first album.
Okay, well, I don't even think I have opinions about the album. We can maybe talk about that later. But discipleship is following someone. Like especially the way Jesus teaches it in the Bible, and his disciples submit to his leadership.
Yes,
and so I just don't see that. I think it would have been really good if Kanye was a disciple of a good mentor.
Yeah. No, he need that. That's what's kind of like frustrating is that, I mean, but like how long into your Christian journey did it take to find a good mentor? It took
it took me about a year.
Long time, and I don't know. They were around me too. When I there were a lot of good Christian mentors around me, and there's a responsibility on the person who needs to be discipled, and it's a humbling,
for sure.
And there's a humbling thing to admit you need to be discipled, because a lot of us want to think that.
But I think that's one of the reasons why I'm a little bit skeptical, is that humility that says I need to take time and really come under someone. I need to be trained, mentored. Training, I don't think is a good word. I need to be, I need to build some strong foundations. I need to get to know the Bible a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think some of my opinion now, just the skepticism, and again, I'm skeptical about almost everything. I just, I think it's his behavior. And and again, it's easy for me to point out at Kanye's behavior because it's so public.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not holding myself, I guess, to any, I wouldn't want my behavior outside public to be noted. But what comes to mind is what he said during Joel Osteen's, when he was at Joel Osteen's church. There's a video of him, and for me.
Oh, he claims he's going on tour with Joel Osteen.
Well, I know, but he the way he presented himself was, having this humble demeanor. I mean, his head seemed to be a little bit bowed to me, and he looked kind of shy, having to speak in front of people.
His body language isn't.
But then,
but then he says something.
Then he starts like talking and preaching in a way, and there's a guy I think behind him. I think he's in the choir, and I guess he was like saying "Amen," cheering him on. And then he turns around and says, "Would you stop that? I appreciate it, but would you stop that? It's interrupting my flow." Like the Holy Spirit is like pouring into him, and he's trying to communicate something. The Holy Spirit's trying to communicate, and this guy's interrupting him.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just ego, like flat out. I mean, in front of the largest congregation in the country, and then to have this humble appearance, and then to turn around and I don't know. I mean.
Oh,
I'm
actually okay with that because I don't like creating false fire. So if there's someone that seems to be doing that, I don't mind them getting called out.
Yeah, I guess that. I think the whole thing was a false fire. I mean, you already have a congregation that's listening to there for an uplifting, positive message.
Yeah. You could say that entire place was exactly. That's it. That's all it ever was.
And then again, I would apply the same standard to Joel Osteen. I know that there's a lot of criticism from Christian churches that go his way, and I would apply the same thing. I'm trying not to be a judge,
Yeah.
but I do have opinions.
No, I agree. But the I don't know. I think I don't like where he's at right now. That's for sure. I don't like where he's at. He should be in some type of discipleship place and not in the limelight. He needs to remove himself from the limelight, which in some ways you could argue he is. In a lot of ways, he's absolutely not.
I totally disagree with that because
you
two albums.
Oh, I see an argument.
There, a Christmas album, and
Well, the Christmas album is a good example for why he shouldn't be in the limelight.
Why he shouldn't?
Shouldn't. Well, I didn't listen to it all.
I didn't listen to it all either.
There's a lot. It's much longer than his first album. And it's not.
It's because his first album did so well.
Yeah. Well, and it's not on. It was released not under Kanye. It wasn't under his name.
Oh.
It was just Sunday Service Choir. And I don't even know where he comes in on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at the album song list right now because track 3 says Revelations 19:1. Should be Revelation 19:1. So there are a lot of it can make us look. It can make him look dumb. You say dumb things.
Well, I think that's where I end up with Kanye is that I wish there were better examples of Christianity out there.
Yeah, for
publicly.
Him. Yeah.
This is kind of where the baked in the cake idea I think kind of comes in here. President Trump is kind of another example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Where he surrounds himself with these evangelicals.
Oh, they're worse than that.
I know. I know, but
yeah, they're a bunch of.
And then you have other evangelical leaders attacking him because of who he surrounds himself with, and it's like, what took me off about Trump was when he said 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
Or
I think he said 2.
Was it 2 Corinthians?
2 Corinthians.
Well, that shows how much.
I thought it was funny, but I actually have heard pastors that pronounce it that way.
Okay, maybe he's a pastor then.
Well,
maybe he's at that caliber.
There's someone that's. I have heard people who are versed in the Bible pronounce it that way, and it kind of makes sense.
Now, I can't give any examples right now, but that phrasing of something that's Christian, like you pointed out the Revelation example, and then 2 Corinthians.
Yeah.
I found that when listening to Kanye's first album, there were a lot of phrases that wouldn't necessarily be incorrect theologically, but aren't used really with Christianity, that at least as we know it. And I can't give any sound examples. It's in the lyrics of the albums. I'm like, who says that?
Well, I'll tell you. So I don't like Christian rap, or I thought I didn't because I've been listening to a lot of it lately. Mm-hmm. So I'm going. One of the things that turned me off from Christian rap was, to me, it appeared like they were. It appeared like they were just bragging about themselves still. Like they got rid of the drugs, got rid of the gangs, got rid of the violence, got rid of everything else, all the terrible things that they rap about and talk about. It's horrible. Mm-hmm. They got rid of all of that except themselves. They still rapped about how awesome they were.
And that seems like a major the major one.
Yeah, that's really what it's all surrounding around is themselves. Sin is whenever you don't fear God, you want to be God, and so I'm like, yeah, I don't like Christian rap because it's arrogant, and even a lot of other music in comparison, Christian rap music would sound more arrogant than a lot of other genres. So I didn't like it. So whenever I heard Kanye's album, I was like, this isn't about Kanye. That was my realization. I was like, this album sounds like, I'm just taking it at what I see it as. Someone had an experience with God. He had a supernatural experience with God. And his reaction was to worship. That's it. That's all I interpreted the album as, was his worship of God after his conversion. And I thought I'll like the album at that value. Now, do I think it's musical? Maybe. I don't like it. Well, musically, it's not my favorite. Lyrically, it's not my favorite.
I'm not where you're at, and I think it has to do with the baggage that I have about Kanye.
Well, I didn't ever. I just put it this way: I didn't ever like him before. Even when he said I'm not a staunch Trump supporter. I'm not a staunch political party supporter at all. And I try to not have a dog in the fight. But even whenever he's starting to say a few more conservative things, because I do lean conservative a lot, then like it was, I didn't care. I don't care. I didn't care about him. It didn't change my opinion of him because I never wanted to listen to. I didn't care what he said.
Well, let me ask you this, and we may want to or not go into this topic very much. Does it sound like I'm being judgmental to Kanye?
Oh, I think so.
Okay, so is that wrong? To be judgmental, like in that regards, like I'm not judging his salvation.
Well, no, you're right, because I don't think it's necessarily always wrong to be judgmental. I think you're right about that. I don't know,
like having an opinion about him.
You could. Maybe we pick a different adjective. I don't know if judgmental's right. I don't think you're thinking of holding him to the same standards that you would any other new Christian.
For sure.
Yes, I think we should.
Well, okay, I say for sure, but
I think you're holding him to a different standard.
I'm always skeptical, like I said.
Like, you can be skeptical all you want, but
isn't that judgmental?
Ultimately, not always. I don't know. Ultimately, the proof's in the pudding, and you judge them by their actions.
Yes.
And I think I like a lot of his actions in comparison to what he was doing. It's a step in the right direction. Now, a lot of the people he's surrounding himself right now are bad. I don't like them.
Well, I think one of the reasons I feel like I'm so harsh on him is because he can do a lot of damage if people are being misled into thinking something. I mean, if later on he denounces or he goes back into people are going to say, oh, maybe that's okay. Well, Kanye is doing it.
Back to why he should be in the limelight. Baby Christians are still, there's a reason why they accepted the grace, because they needed it. And sanctification does not happen overnight. Like, my experience, you get saved, or, there are moments in your life like this, a lot of them, where it feels like God just overcomes you with the Spirit, completely tears you apart. You're incredibly humbled. You feel like your entire being is torn down and replaced with Christ. But then,
for sure, yeah.
Later on, it happens again, and you're like, "What? I thought I was completely replaced." You know what I mean?
Well, I could explain that. I know exactly what happens there.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's a continual sanctification. Like what we thought was all of us was just a little bit. That's not all of us.
Well, I think when someone comes to Christ, when they're a new believer and they're surrendered. I think the key word there is surrendered, because that's what's got to happen when someone comes to Christ, is that they surrender themselves to the lordship of Jesus. And as a church, and this would be for my church or for, any church, when you have a new believer, it is important that they get discipled.
Yeah.
Because what quickly happens is we fall back to our default nature, which is all about me.
Yes.
And myself and what is good for me. The focus on possession, self-glorification, comfort, all those things come back into play. And then what we have to do is surrender ourselves again back under his, now for me and for probably for everybody, it's a continual battle to continuously surrender ourselves daily and renew our minds to Christ.
Yeah, and daily is the key, because if you wake up one day thinking that it was good enough, then it wasn't.
Right, and so if it's easy to have that, I think that's the kind of the high that people talk about when they go on a retreat and they come to Christ. And they come back all high, and then once they're we see this in youth groups a lot. Once they get off the retreat, and then they kind of come down from the spiritual high, and then I think that's kind of what's taking place here is that we're not so much focused on God anymore, but our own self ambitions come back in the way. Our ego comes back in the way.
I try to give Kanye grace, because there are things that even in his good interviews he says things I don't like, particularly when he talks about God showing off through him. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
And that he's like the greatest musician God's ever created. Yeah.
He'll say things like that, and at face value, that's pretty horrible. If he means exactly that, then what was, what I mean? That's glorifying yourself, not God. He'll say things like that God is showing off through him, like it's God but through him. But he'll be like bragging about how he got a bunch of money back on his taxes, he got to keep things like this, and I'm like, that's not necessarily the Christian life. Like, let's just pretend that you're saying it, and I'm misunderstanding you, and it's truth, and I'm
or maybe he's joking,
or he's joking, whatever. But you're painting a bad image of the Christian life, because I don't get giant tax returns.
As someone who thinks he's a Christian, I'm confused. So how are non-Christians, or how are they going to take it?
Yeah,
it's I don't know. I'm cautiously skeptical, and you know what? And if he's a Christian believer and he's a sold out believer, then that's a good thing. For him. I mean, he'll have eternal life. And so he doesn't need my approval. I think, I'm just cautious.
I would just, like, in his song, he says, I believe it was his song, Follow God. It was, I just want to treat him, even though I have tons of criticisms of him, I can criticize fellow believers in the Lord all the time. We disagree on a lot of things. When he says that, who were the first ones to judge me, he's talking about the Christians.
Oh, you're talking about a different song. You're talking about Hands On.
Oh, it's Hands On. You're right. It is Hands On. So he's talking about in the song Hands On, and make it feel like nobody loved me is what he says. They would be the first ones to judge me, make you feel like nobody loved me. And
let me just read what he says there.
Okay.
It says, what have you been hearing from the Christians? They'll be the first one to judge me, make it feel like nobody loved me. They'll be the first one to judge me, feeling like nobody loved me.
Make it feel alone in the dark, and you never see the light. Is what also.
So I think those are probably some very hypocritical words there.
How? What? I don't want new believers to feel that way.
Oh, me neither. Me neither.
How is it hypocritical?
Because isn't he a Christian? So already he's placing judgment where he doesn't want judgment. He's judging the Christians that are judging
judgment's
him.
Not always wrong. I think he's justly being judging the way he was treated by a lot of Christians. I think it was wrong for a lot of Christians to treat him like that. I think they should accept him at his word. If I had a supernatural experience with the creator of the world and I came back to tell you about it, and you also have had that experience, and now we're a part of a fellowship that's stronger than any other fellowship, and I'm excited to be here with you, and then you tell me that it's fake, the outpouring from that Christian community is that you're not one of us, that would hurt me. I would hate that. That's why when I hear that line, I'm like, Well,
then it also comes across like, well, it's almost like a security blanket. I'm going to do my own thing, and but you can't judge me, Christians, because I'm going to do my own thing. You may not like it; it may not be like the Christian thing to do, but so it's like
I think you're
trying to defend himself to an argument that may or may not have happened.
Well, I think you're 100% right, because we see that all the time with people who claim to be Christians but don't love the church, and they say every time I walk into a church, I'm judged. I'm like, well, maybe you're being righteously rebuked in love, and you just, people don't like to hear things that they don't want to hear.
Now, well, I think judgment within the church is completely different than judging someone who's not in the church.
Well, so say they, a regular attender, people who avoid the church, and they say it's because they're judgmental, this and this and this and this, and I'm like, well, you're called to be holy. Like, if you claim to be a Christian, you're going to be held to Christian standards, hopefully, by your surrounding Christians.
But that's
part. And people use that as an excuse.
Yeah, that's part of the humility of being a part of a church. If you said something about me in my life, I'd receive it. I may not agree with it, and we could talk about it, but I would receive it as someone that is a brother in Christ, talking into my life. If a pastor, same thing.
Yeah.
It's I would receive it.
Yeah.
And at least strongly consider it, because part of the church is that, not that we judge one another. That's probably not the word we would use. We'd use accountability.
Yeah.
That I as a member of this church body open myself up to their input into my life.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yes.
And so to be able to say that they're going to judge me, or I'm going to leave because they're judging me.
Yeah.
That's saying I'm not open to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah.
And you don't have to agree with it. And you know what? Being a Christian, there's going to be a lot more than just judgment within the church.
Oh yeah.
Persecution for those that are going against the world that is anti-Christ, anti-against them.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them are going to face persecution, beatings, and maybe even martyrdom.
Yeah.
And we're worried about judgment against other Christians.
Yeah, it's pretty petty.
And so that's the problem I have with those lyrics. Now, I get it. Maybe he's just voicing what people feel.
Yeah.
Against the church, because
see, as
nothing makes me mad more than self-righteous Christians who are hard on sinners.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah, you're right. Well, they don't know God. You have right. God will hold them up to His standards whenever, because they chose their own ways. You don't need to do it. God will judge righteously. I'm glad it's God that judges and not other people. But it's just, as long as he's being honest. I guess I'm trying to take it as he's not being deceitful. If you take that statement as he's being honest, I think it's a righteous judgment. Mm-hmm. against his fellow Christians. Yeah. It's always that, but that's involving a little bit of trust.
Well, yeah, and the big difference there also between him and maybe a new believer that's in our church is that I can get to know the person coming into our church, and I don't know Kanye. I've never had a conversation with him. All I get to see is what's on TV, what's the media portrays. Yeah, and and that's the harsh reality of the world today.
Yeah.
Is that everything is broken down into sound bites, and even as we speak, on this date, or in this past week, there's been a lot of controversy about the attacking Iran and all that, and who knows the truth? Somebody does, but but what's communicated to us through the media and the opinions that everyone's giving, the podcasts that are out there that are giving their 2 cents.
Yeah.
I don't know Kanye personally, and the thing about Christianity is that it can get very personal, and so a new believer that comes into the church, we can get to know. We can take them out to lunch. We can get to know who they are, and you can develop. Even though you 100% won't know what's really going on in their heart, you'll get to know people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you got to get to know Kanye. Well, I do appreciate this might be changing the subject a little bit. I do appreciate what this has done to me in my new revelation of Christian rap. Because like I was saying earlier, it's super conceited and terrible. I hated it.
Well, you sent me one that was pretty good.
Well, yeah, that's what we're getting into.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if you thought it was pretty good. Which one was it?
I don't remember.
So I found a lot of artists.
First, before we get into that, when I first mentioned to you about Kanye's album, you said you made a comment that you thought the music was good. The music. And so I went back and listened, and I was like, yeah, it does sound good musically.
Well, some songs. I don't like a lot of them. Follow God and Selah, I like a lot. And I like that last song. The
last song is pure scripture. You can't go wrong there.
I can appreciate things, Mm-hmm. I used to be the type of person that if my favorite band came out with a new album that didn't sound exactly like the last album, I hated them, mm-hmm. and they betrayed me. I'm not like that anymore. I appreciate his creativity. It wasn't a Christian rap album. It wasn't a Christian, just secular album. It was a gospel album.
Okay, I get you there
so I appreciate the creativity, even if I didn't like it.
When you mentioned about the music, and I went back and just listened to it purely for the music, I did have an appreciation for it.
Yeah.
He uses an organ. I imagine it's like a Hammond organ or something.
Yeah, like a B3.
Yeah, and it adds a really neat effect.
I love organs.
The choral sound that sounds like a black gospel church.
Yeah,
that feel that he's putting into it. I do like that. The lyrics, I don't even, some of it's like a logic problem. It's like maybe that's part of the appeal, that you have to try to figure out what they mean.
It's not always easily understood.
Yeah, I mean, it's like jumping from one topic to the next, to the next, to the next.
Yeah.
Without one clear stream of, this is, what I'm trying to get across. Even that song, Hands On, I mean, it's like he's talking about the plight that African Americans face, I'm assuming, because it's, hands up, right? I mean,
I don't know. I didn't hear it that way.
Okay, so it says hands up high, hands on, hands on. Does that mean hands on the hood of the police car? So then 13th Amendment, 3 strikes. This is the 5th line down.
Yeah.
Got pulled over, see the brights. He's talking about being pulled over by police, I think.
Yeah.
As I try to figure out what he's trying to say here. And then
but it's like it turns into a metaphor, of kind of where it's going in life.
Okay, yeah.
So you could see the 13th Amendment, part. You might think he's talking about something about race, but what he starts talking about later kind of, I think, helps us interpret the beginning of the song. I will say there are a lot of places in there that. Yeah, I think it's just because of the genre in general of rap music that it's coming from, it being bad, that it's just that line was only there to rime. The only reason that line was there was to rhyme.
Right.
Did not need to make sense with anything else.
Yeah.
That's a criticism of the album. I think you should be better than that. I think as an artist, you should be musically better than that. If you're gonna, especially a rap artist, rap where you're known for great rhyming, let's be intentional about it, you know?
Okay, so I just want to mention the musicality part.
The musicality.
So back to...
Well, it does help me segue to a little bit to these other Christian artists that I found. And not to hate on some of the big ones like Andy Mineo or Lecrae, but they just never really did it for me. And they took a few stances in politics. I don't think about anything about Andy Mineo. Lecrae took a few stances in politics. There are things he said that turned me off from him.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
So, because I did like Lecrae when I was in grade school, listened to a lot of him. I've been to a Lecrae concert. But even after going to the Lecrae concert, I think there's a lot of arrogance, just in his demeanor. But the other artist, it started with, I think it's Shai Linne, ShaILINNE. Do you remember what song it was that I sent you?
It was when he was the singer was blasting like preachers.
Oh yeah,
and I thought it was hilarious. The rhyming and I thought it was pretty like humorous, but right on.
Yeah.
Even though I would never be bold enough to come out and make statements like that against other preachers.
Yeah, he's calling out false teachers.
Right.
Now what I liked about him was it's called Lyrical Theology. Was Lyrical Theology Part 1 is my favorite album from him, from Shai Linne.
What's the name of the song?
False Teachers, but the S's are money signs. So and he's just talking about he blasts them hard, and he gets a few that even some Baptists play friendly with, which I liked a lot. I love it when someone's bold enough to call out false teachers like that. And what I like about this album is it's teaching theology. The album is teaching theology. He has a song called The Millennium, Regeneration, the hypostatic union. I'm like, well, this is crazy. This is awesome.
Oh, I think isn't...
And it's done well.
Like with Kanye, you can't get there with his songs because, just of the wide range of topics.
Yeah.
Here, there is like at least a focus on God, on theology, on a direction.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, because I'm not trying to figure out the metaphors behind.
Yeah, it's straightforward.
Right.
Yeah, so the false teachers, it looks like is his most popular from this, according to Apple. But Election was my favorite. That song was just, it's talking about the doctrine of election. But yes, I agree with the doctrine.
I'm just looking at the list.
Yeah, I agree with the doctrine of election.
I'm glad I'm not on that list.
But what he, what that song taught me, because I already agreed with, everything he's saying, it taught me something different though, was he says that, God wrote the doctrine of election. If I'm gonna stick to a doctrine, I need to be able to stick to it and defend that this is a doctrine that God wrote and ordained. This is a part of the Bible. This is a teaching that is inherent to the Bible. I don't want to stick to some fickle ideas.
Yeah, election's not one that I feel like I want to talk about right now.
Well, I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about defending doctrine.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, if you're going to defend a doctrine, you need to be able to if you're going to agree with the doctrine, abide by some type of doctrine, you need to take it seriously enough that it should change the way you behave in some way, and you should be able to defend it with the Bible. If you don't know that doctrine well enough to say that God wrote it, then you probably don't know that doctrine, and you probably don't really believe it. Yeah. We need to be much more versed in our arguments for that.
For sure.
And
even just reading the Bible, how are we to know false teachers and whether or not we can trust Kanye and what he's doing? Well, the simple test is the Scripture. Yeah. Is it matching up with what Scripture says? Mm-hmm. And, the only way we can do that is if we're reading our Bibles, the standard.
Well, with you're completely right, and for a lot of people, I have a couple friends who are, they don't know if they're Christians. Sometimes they think they are. Sometimes they think they're not. And one of them particularly, I kind of helped talk him out of Mormonism, but I don't know where he's at, because he's in and out of jail. So sometimes he'll be like, I guess I'm a Mormon now because I got to go back to what I know. And he loves rap music, just loves it. Thinks it's the best hip hop rap. It's the best thing in the world. And I have more than one album to help teach him, theology. And a lot of times what they don't know to trust me, because I'll tell them these things, and a lot of the things are so contrary, especially if we're walking out of another religion like Mormonism, so contrary to their belief. They're like, they don't believe the last person, and they really don't know to believe you now either,
right?
Because they don't know what's true anymore, because you're kind of showing how wrong. They at least know what they believe is wrong. Now they don't know it's true, and.
Well, that's why the personal connection is so important.
So I can't seek Scripture and build trust.
Right. So, I think this is my opinion, and I think it's something that the church in general can grow on is their method of evangelism. Like when I was in seminary, as part of my evangelism class, I was to go door to door, knocking on people's houses, and then asking them to trust me with what I'm saying about heaven and hell.
Yeah.
That's when it comes down to. Like I would say, do you know how to get to heaven? And then all of a sudden, with meeting this person, and within 1 minute, I'm expected that they'll trust me. And this is a lot different than going to a neighbor you lived next door with for years, and getting to know someone, getting to know their family, getting to know their hardships, praying for them, being there for them, supporting them where they know you. You let them know you, and then you get to know them, and then once trust is developed, they'll trust the words that you have to say.
Yeah.
And some people say that's a little bit too social. That all we need to do is proclaim the gospel, but like, why would I trust you? Like, what there's got to be a little, in some instances, I think we have the opportunity to get to know people a little bit deeper, and so that trust is developed.
I think the way that God chooses to reveal himself to people is different for every person,
How so? I'm writing about this right now, okay. I'm curious.
So you're curious? Well, we all have different journeys. Well, our testimonies aren't all the same. If it was all the same, why is it not that everyone says, well, I was saved the Sunday that I walked down and talked to the pastor and asked to be baptized? That's not what anyone says. And even when someone did do that, that's not the moment. It's you. A lot of the times, it's not that sermon that day. That what I mean.
For sure.
It's been something that's been happening for weeks. It's not justification in an instant. It's justification over time, and through someone continually showing God's love to them, and that looks different.
And I don't think many of us want to dedicate that amount of time.
Yeah. Well, because you get burned too.
We want to.
We want it to be easy.
We want to break it down to a formula that we can memorize.
If we can just tithe, and if we just do something different on Sundays, if we change the music, people will start coming back, and we're measuring success by how many people we have. And it's all false. Everyone's under the illusion of success. And then one day, God, pulls the pews, and everyone's gone, and we're down to few. And but they're earnest, but it's real. And you're like, wow, this fellowship's better. The real fellowship, that realness, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, authenticity.
Yeah, the people being authentic with each other, and sharing the gospel, and taking responsibility. That's a lot of I'm convicted of is taking responsibility. Like, what are the responsibilities of the church? Who have we given them to, and which ones are we not doing at all? Where are we failing?
And I think for my history of being with churches, it's authenticity.
Yeah, I think it is.
Just being real instead of fulfilling some attendance requirement.
I think we're really going. I think the church is in a culture change, and I think the institutionalized church is going to start looking a lot different, than even what it already does look like. Maybe not Sunday services, but the other actions of the church. Their small groups will look different, and I think that the people who come to church, since it's not fashionable, is breeding a lot. I'm optimistic, but a little more authenticity, because especially anyone under, I don't know, I'm not sure what number to pick. Let's pick 40. Millennials and under. Millennials can be a little older than 40, maybe.
I think millennials are especially skeptical.
Yeah, they're skeptical. So whenever you see people of that generation in church, they did not grow up in a culture that it was
the system
fashionable to go to church. They're going against the system because they're doing something that's difficult, maybe that's not normal, because something real probably happened. So I think that's what a lot of new churchgoers are looking for. Is they want the authenticity that they feel.
There's no doubt that life is difficult.
Yeah.
That people go through hard times in life, but you don't hear about that too often in church.
No.
And this is like one of my big complaints against Sunday schools in general, is that the topics just seem to stay very curriculum.
Shallow.
Yeah, curriculum.
Yeah.
And my shtick, what I tend to do with my rebellious kind of is to ask the question to make it real. That it actually applies to us. Yeah. So it's not just something we stick in our heads, but that really means something that's relevant to the life that we're living.
Yeah, because a lot of the curriculum's just trying to play it safe. Because they are writing to different, Lifeway, which was the Baptist Sunday School board.
Right.
It's Baptist theology, but it's the biggest producer of curriculum for churches and Sunday schools. Multiple denominations are buying Lifeway things, and they're trying to make it accessible.
I think it's like,
so they don't get into things.
Just to the Sunday school that I'm a part of. That's one of the things I appreciate, is the freedom to not just go by the curriculum, but to talk about the Sunday school leader allows us to really ask questions and talk about them.
Well, and this is rare. Everywhere else I've been in life, it seems like we have some people who don't mind disagreeing. In a lot of places, once people start disagreeing with each other at all, they can't get along anymore.
Right.
But people disagree all the time, and we get along great. It helps. It grows. We get along better because of our disagreements.
For sure.
So I agree. I like that. So, well, we talked about a lot of things today.
Yeah, I think to bring it full circle back to Kanye is I don't know his journey.
Yeah.
And so I do want to be careful of that. I don't know like what his life was like. I don't know what his experiences were like, and so again, I really don't like talking about other people like I know them. I don't know him, and I hope that it's sincere. I hope that his sanctification journey continues, and and we see a progression. But character's only seen over time. Yeah. Right. It's history, having a history of building, and so I think it's still too soon for for my judgment. I'm still skeptical. I'm cautious. I'm cautious of anyone that's out in the public eye, and but for me, it's like I better be doing what I need to be doing. Yeah. My sanctification journey is nowhere near
the end.
Yeah, complete.
Yeah.
Hopefully, unless I get hit by a car on the way home.
Yeah.
It's we're all growing, and I think where I kind of end up on this is self-reflection. I think as we were, I know we were saving the topic to talk on the podcast, but the month that it took us to come out and actually do this, it made me think and reflect about, am I judging Christians?
Yeah.
Is that right? Is it right to judge him? Is it? And so it did cause reflection, and above all that, I need to focus on myself. I need to make sure I'm doing things that are building my character, and that I'm being a good example for the people that I'm around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I completely agree. We definitely went. I think we went longer this time than the first one.
That's unbelievable. It only feels like it's been like 10 minutes.
This one felt like a quick one. That is for sure. I'm not sure what time we officially started, but it's been over an hour. I know that much, and that's about my attention span when it comes to a lot of podcasts. Unless it's a conspiracy theory podcast, that'll be it. Oh, I'm going to go deep into that.
There's some really popular ones out there that go 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, well, I'm guilty of listening to some 4-hour podcasts. But if anyone wants us to go 4 hours, if we get 3 people to say we'll go 4 hours, then we're gonna do it.
All 3 listeners better reply with something.
Yes, out of the maybe dozens of us. But we'll pull a long haul, and that's a great conversation. So thank you for listening today, on whatever device you're listening on.
Yeah, and I'd say feel free to comment. Keep it nice. Be nice. And in the show notes, there will be a phone number that you can leave a message or just leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening to this on.
Yes, and you enjoy your... I pray that you would have a fantastic 2020 coming for this new year. All right. Thank you. See you later.